Let's see, by my clock, it's at 7:02. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run a video by our kind sponsor, Glass Tire, and then we'll get our evening rolling. Okay, thank you to Glass Tire and to all of you for joining us tonight. I'm Terry Thornton, Curator of Education at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. Welcome to Being There, Tuesday evenings with the Modern, the museum's online alternative to the long-running lecture series Tuesday evenings at the Modern. Each week for this special program, a guest curator, someone who has participated in the Tuesday evening program in the past, invite someone within the larger art world, which of course includes the poetry world and more, someone they find compelling to give that evening's presentation. This is followed by a Q&A generated by you. So as tonight's presentation proceeds, you can type your questions by accessing Zoom's Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. And at the end, the speaker will entertain as many questions as time allows. Tonight's guest curator is the artist Annette Lawrence, who participated in Tuesday evenings on one of my earliest Tuesday evenings in the fall of 1995, and again in the spring of 2017. Ever faithful, I so appreciate Annette accepting my proposal for tonight's format and for her extending an invitation to none other than the poet Nikky Finney, who Annette will now introduce.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for that invitation in 1995, Tuesday evening lecture, and for the beginning of this long relationship. I was also introduced to Nikky Finney in 1995 when her book, Rice, her second book, was new. A group of friends, women friends in Houston, invited her to do a reading, and she proceeded to bring the house down. And one of the poems that she read was called The Black Orion. It was about her uncle, Frederick J. Davenport, who was a farmer and a careful observer of the sky. So he knew the earth and he knew the cosmos, and the poem is a beautiful tribute to him. Fast forward to 2020, I'm in my car listening to the radio, and Weekend All Things Considered is on, and Nikky is the guest. So among the program, there were other things going on, but there was mention of a new book, Love Child's Hotbed of Occasional Poetry. And one of the hotbeds in this new book is about the preeminent woman of letters, Toni Morrison. So in thinking about the introduction to Nikky tonight and the span of time that I've known her work, I see the work as an embodiment of the man of the earth and sky and the woman of letters. So with that, I introduce you to the political, spiritual, historical, metaphysical, philosophical, award-winning poet, professor, sister friend, Ms. Nikky Finney.
Thank you so much, Annette. Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you, The Modern, and thank you everybody behind the scenes making this happen. And thank you for coming to share in this moment with us tonight. I'm really super, super happy to be here. I want to read that poem that Annette heard in 1995, I don't have favorites. That would be like choosing between children. I'm not going to do that. But this poem means a lot to me because of who inspired it. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. In my family, we would have family reunions, and there was this one person who always came in who was kind of the outlier. He was a little strange, and I really liked that because I thought, well, I'm a little strange, so we must be related to each other. And he was my grandfather's brother, Uncle Freddie. He lived across the road from my grandparents. And he would go outside at night and look at the sky when it was pitch black. He was a farmer, and he also had a room in his house that nobody could go in. And so we all whispered about what might be in this room. And one day I was coming home and I stopped by to see him, and he took me back in this room and he pulled out something from the ceiling tile, and it was a paper that he had written in college, and no one knew he had gone to college for just a little while. But at the top of this paper, the name of the paper was "One Day a Man Will Walk on the Moon," and there was a big red F on the paper. And he gave me the paper as some kind of award for being strange and an outlier and thinking outside the box. And he said, "Remember, when you believe something and nobody else believes with you, just hold on to it. Hold on to that idea." And so this is called the Black Orion. The starman was Frederick J. Davenport, 1903 to 1992. In his orbiting eyes, we are all slaves, and there are more new ones of us born every day, slavish to things we cannot do without, slavish to whatever is new and fandangled, polished and pearled. In his cornfield, while waiting for grouse to stir, to shoot and freeze for Christmas, he told me, "I am leaving a world of slaves behind. So what am I really leaving? It's time to go when that's all what's left. Each of you," he said, "are every letter of the wanting rainbow. No wonder you define loneliness by what you do not have. There at least," he said, "I'll be around things that ain't so beholding. A starman has lifted off the ground. A brilliant man is walking weightless through his own clouds. A man who did not know that things had ever changed because he beheld the sky as something that may shift, but was forever dependably exact. A man who did not believe that things should ever change. His only concern was up. His channel was the shifting sky and the always ground. He found scripture in the tissue-thin pages of the almanac. A man who did not want to know the answer to it all, who liked it the old way, just fine. In college astronomy, 1959, Fred J. Davenport wrote a paper. He predicted that in 10 years, more or less, a man would walk on the moon. And would he be a slave too, Uncle? Of course he would, he said, if he turned around and came back here. Handing in these dreamy notions to learned men who graded him poorly. Slaves, he said of them all, as he sat before their limited eyes. Slaves could only see it as illuminated soil. The starman, he saw it as real and therefore walkable. His prediction missed by only weeks. This blazing, unfettered man who spent his life staring at the sky more than he kept up or eye on any human spheres knew. He scared me how he knew. Don't you get on the road, girl, until Lyra lines up with Orion. Yes, sir. Barley-colored, bespeckled, tin caps and goobers, always in his pockets. Cracked shells, his human droppings all over his land. This, he would say to me, this is the real money. At night, he would stand before the sky, arms folded and alone, a motionless dragon nostriling the dark, breaking bread at his terrestrial table and tossing Dr. Carver seeds as he came and went, preaching always about the arrangement of above and nothing else. His white corn silk hair moving downwind like a cloud of gas and dust. The black Orion who planted taters and melons by the aggregates of lights and darks, by shooting stars and the aurora australis, explaining to me that I was a slave because I could never stay long enough to see his meteors shower, because I could never come and visit him alone there in his pine tree galaxy, teeming with red dust bowls and candle flies, and to his unbuttoned eyes, there, it was always too sacred and dark, too perfect and complete to ever welcome my hardbound, no-count books. So many times I came up his road, a skinny, empty-handed woman, and left a fat, imaginative girl with too many presents in my arms to carry. It is Sunday. I call home. I hear Mama say, "He's gone, baby." The starman left the ground today, lifted off without me, just like he said he would, gone up, away far, far from all of us, clinging, sightless slaves. That's for Uncle Freddie, who left a long time ago, but who stays so close to me in my heart, in my philosophy of life. He would go out and read the sky, and I forgot to tell you that I never saw any money in his pockets. I don't know how he paid for anything, but he always, when he got dressed in his overalls, he always put an almanac in his back pocket just so he could read the sky and know what to plant and know how to, make his way through the world. So that's one poem, and this night is called An Ekphrastic Life, and it's very true. I'm incredibly visually inclined, not just, I think, in a sort of traditional or normal kind of way. I really write through a visual relationship with the world. And so I wanted to share another poem with you that's in the new book, Love Child's Hotbed of Occasional Poetry, which Annette and I will talk about at the end of these three poems. John, I'm not going to do the one with the little boy, but I am going to do the one with the cargo ship and the oil spill. So a little backstory on this poem is there was a horrible massacre, mass killing in South Carolina. I know you know about it, in 2015. And it happened at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. And I was brokenhearted and furious. And I also wanted to write about something about this moment in our lives as Americans, human beings, Southerners. And I couldn't find my way in. I couldn't find a window. I always call where's the window that I'll go through to write about? I didn't want to write what everybody was saying in the news. I really wanted to write something else. And so I watched the trial, and there I saw Miss Polly Shepherd, who was the only survivor of that massacre. And I didn't realize something had happened. After everybody had been shot that evening, the person who had shot them came to Miss Polly, and he asked her a question that she repeated on the witness stand. And the question was, when he got to her, he said, "Have I shot you yet?" And after I caught my breath from the incredulous feeling I felt about one human being asking another person that question in a room full of people who had already been shot, I realized that had something to do with what I wanted to write about. And so I still couldn't find my way in. And then I was asked to look through 500 photographs for an exhibit called Southbound. And these Southern photographers had been taking pictures for several years, and I was to choose one, and I couldn't choose one. I ended up choosing 4 to write ekphrastic poetry about. And this picture that John is about to put up is by Daniel Beltra, and it's called Oil Spill Number 12, and he took it in 2010. And when I saw it, I couldn't stop looking at it. One, because of the beauty of and the horror mixed together side by side, the beauty of the color, the horror that this is my beloved ocean, and this oil tanker has spilled all of this into the sea. And so I knew that when I saw this photograph, that this was my window into saying what I wanted to say about the Mother Emanuel massacre and also about Miss Polly. So, John, if you maybe will keep that up while I read this, that would be great. Miss Polly is akimbo underneath the Mother Emanuel collection table. The one who came to start the next civil war speaks to her directly. Have I shot you yet? There is no one else left to answer. In the church basement, all are dead or bleeding out. Miss Polly, half on her knees, is askew, tilted, her last angle, akimbo to the 9 others who are sprawled and already spiraling toward heaven. In her mind, she too is about to die. There is no place to hide when you are the last one facing the waving gun. The air has been invaded by a poison mix of bright red ore spewing from his mouth. There was a spilling. There is about to be another. He cannot see the seeming septic colors, but she can, and there is no isthmus wide enough beneath her shield of a table to keep her from the current of his nonstop debris. A floating band of iron orange tincture crooks her pounding heart, but does not push her downstream. She waits sideways, as high up as she can, refusing to look at him. She knows how evil can enter through the iris if beheld too long. She will not be all black and blue, unsure of what has been released in the room. A river of flaming copper is moving slowly through her blood. She is an honest woman and has seen with her own 2 honest woman eyes what hate erupting inside a man can do and what this one has done. She decides her last words on this earth will not be camouflaged and khaki, handed over just before he runs out the same way he walked in. When he shot the pastor, she could have faked it, fallen over sideways, held herself perfectly still, asked her body to lie for her, but that would not have been the life she has lived. It will not be the death she dies at his feet. She turns into the last one standing, and her molten answer arrives. It is the color of pounded beets beaten out of their safe skins. Her persimmon words outline every beloved bullet-riddled body still lying on the floor. No, she says. No, you have not. Thank you, John. And then lastly, I love writing in all forms. I love poetry. I love the way the imagination and research take hold of me. And one of the pieces of writing that are found in this book are called hotbeds. And hotbed, I'm a journal keeper. I write in my journal every day. I have written in my journal since I was probably 10 years old. So I have a bookshelf of 150 books with numbers on the back. And I realized when I moved back home to take care of my father who had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2013, that this was not just going to be a book of poems, that I wanted to curate this book. I wanted to make a collage of things in this book. So one of the things that I pulled out of my journal books were things that I labeled hotbeds, which is where the poems sort of were given birth to. A hotbed for a gardener is where you take the seed and you grow it until it starts growing strong, and then you put it in a pot or you put it in the ground. It's where this time of growing and getting the sunshine and all the nutrients you need to grow into what you need to be. And so in this book, you will find hotbeds, and you'll find them numbered. And so this is hotbed number 58. And we'll talk about what category it falls in, maybe when we get to the Q&A. It's December in Sweden, and I've come to pick up Miss Morrison from the Nobel banquet at Stockholm City Hall. I'm driving the washed and waxed black limousine. I have on my vintage Pullman Porter hat. My locks are tucked tight under the rim of the 50-year-old brim. She won't recognize me. She won't remember our many meetings years ago when I stood in a very long line waiting for her to sign my hot off the press copy of Song of Solomon. I had my first book on wings made of gauze hiding under my arm as gift. I wanted to show her evidence of what her words had helped me realize. An hour later, when I finally reached her, she stared at the front of the book for a minute, then turned it over. A startling black and white photo stretched from top to bottom. She looked from the photo back to me. "Look at you," she said, then added, "You working?" Her statement was Black woman familiar, something one of my aunts might have said to encourage audacity. It was the question that startled me. Had I been waiting for the compliment and not a question about devotion? I never answered. The bookstore assistant pushed me along, welcoming the next reader in line. I have kept that moment and the question she asked me over my desk for the last 30 years. The city hall doorman brings me back to the streets of Stockholm when he opens the car door for Miss Morrison. The ceiling light pops on and he helps her into the dark back. Of course, because she is who she is, she notices everything. My poking out locks, the cool, nicely visible Pullman seal on the front of the hat. She seems to be staring at its reflection in the rearview mirror. "Nice hat," she says, without giving comment about the wayward lock. "Thank you." The limo driver's training course said not to speak unless spoken to. I don't look her way. I've been practicing playing it cool for weeks. She calls Lois her sister on her new Nokia 100, the latest in 1993 mobile phone technology. I've never seen one before. Of course, Miss Morrison would have one of the first. She raises the phone to her beautiful Howard Hughes dramaturge lips and leans into the back seat like a woman who knows good leather from bad. Like a woman who has just won the Nobel Prize in Literature and left nothing worth hearing unsaid for the moment. She's relaxed and staring out the window into the world she owns. I can tell she's tired of Swedes and caviar and just wants to get back to her Hudson River Drive. I say nothing and ease away from the traffic light into the starry, frigid Stockholm night. I want to open my mouth and tell her the backstory about quitting my job and buying a ticket to Sweden and applying for this part-time job in order to drive her wherever she wants to go while she is in Stockholm to receive the greatest literary award in the world. but not even Toni Morrison would believe my long Afro galaxy story that is absolutely true. I try to use only the side mirrors to see what I need to see and get us where we need to go, because if she notices me looking at her in the rear view, she'll know I'm a fraud. First, she'll see the river banking in my eyes, and next, the ocean gathering in my face, the deep water of how grateful I am. I am here in Stockholm because I want to thank her for writing the books she needed to read and for making more than one copy. I don't want her to see or ask me any questions about the journal book I have open on the front seat. I don't want her to ask what a Black woman with locks is doing driving a limo in Stockholm 2 weeks before Christmas, one night after the sacred night of her Nobel Prize award. A coincidence? Hardly. You know how she likes to follow her questions out backwards all the way to the end. Red light. What a great Black woman laugh she has. Lois must have said something Lorraine, Ohio, crazy. Miss Morrison's laugh could make a Black man wearing blue silk take flight off the top of a hospital building and not look down. She tells Lois to hold on a minute and covers the speaker holes in the funny shaped phone with her writing hand that sparkles with a one-of-a-kind blue sapphire. Well, she says, look at you, Miss Pullman Porter, all these years and you still haven't answered my question. Haven't you heard? I don't like to repeat myself. Well, maybe just this once. You working? So I think, thank you for listening, and Annette, return and let us talk.
All right, thank you for that. It was, yay.
I had to read that last piece, and that likes that last piece a lot. I like it a lot, and it's not too long, but sometimes I'm long-winded, so I don't write the shortest pieces in the world, but
there's longer
it worked out okay.
Yeah. I had a question. I just it's not coming to me at the moment. I really enjoyed hearing all three of those pieces. And I didn't know you were going to read that one, the one in the middle. So that was, I think it's just right for this moment to remember that. And it goes along with that list I just read to you, before we started.
Yeah.
Spiritual, historical, metaphorical, philosophical.
Yeah, that was a long list. I was like, whoa, who is she talking about there? I don't know.
I kept adding to it.
Yeah, but I love those things. I love philosophy. I mean, when I was in college and when I was in high school, I mean, just my whole life, I could never, people have always tried to choose one of these lanes, get in it and stay in it. And I was like, no, I like philosophy. I like architecture. I like painting. I like, poetry. I love all these things. And one of the things that I am still following is my love for many, many things. And I refuse to choose a lane and stick to it. And one of the things I talk to my students about, no matter what they're majoring in, I mean, this is a world that likes for you to choose so they can box you, right? And I don't want to be in a box. I just really want to, my curiosity has always led me, my love of language, I had a 10th grade English teacher who walked down the hall with a dictionary under her arm, whom I adore to this day because I've had these quirky people in my life who have taught me by their living example that it was okay to be quirky and to love many different things and to bring them under one awning in this thing called poetry. And that's what I do. And I love it. I feel very lucky to be able to do it.
I think that, I mean, for artists as well, that's important to have that range of things, that you have something to work about, something to respond to in your work, and all the questions that you might have about those things show up, which makes it interesting for people who are reading to have
Right.
to dig into those same questions.
Right. Yeah. Like I loved when I first realized I was a teenager that my Uncle Freddie was leaving his house at night to read the night sky. And I thought, well, no wonder the family thinks he's crazy, you know? But then as I got older, I read about the Dogon people in Mali who had been reading the night sky for 6 million years. And it's like, wait, you cannot do that to somebody who has ancient wisdom, you know? And I realized Uncle Freddie had an ancient wisdom. He wasn't talking about it. He wasn't trying to get on the news, you know, but he was always doing things that seemed to point back to somebody who believed in another time, in a different kind of time where people honored the earth. He was already a farmer, you know, and here he was asking the sky for help with what he was going to plant and how to survive this. And I'm just so glad that I got to know him and that he trusted me with that paper where he predicted what he predicted, and not in a loud, you know, boisterous kind of show off kind of way, just in a, like, let me tell you that you're on the right path with your life by giving this to you, and look at this F. And when people judge you, know who's judging you and know who's not. And it was so many lessons in that one little offering that he gave.
Do you have that paper?
Oh, yes. I pull it. I have many things that are in plastic. I hate plastic, but the things that I have that. Before my grandmother died, she gave me a little bowl of Indian head dimes that are made out of silver, and she was like, "You'll never be poor if you have these 30 dimes." And I, you know, rub my hands over them. I keep, you know, things that I feel like they're spirit-based more than anything else. Yeah, I have that paper, and I have little things like that scattered out throughout my life.
Perfect. Do we want to open it up? Do we have more dialogue? Terry, you're muted.
All right, that was amazing. What a pleasure. Oh, I can't get over how fortunate I am, and all of us who are here. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
No surprise that the two of you would connect. My goodness. That and your journals. I don't know, for those of you who might not be privy, that first Tuesday evening that Annette did in '95, Nikki, I don't think I told you this either, was her reading her journal every Tuesday up until that night. And so she ended with, you know, I'm in front of a crowd at da-da-da-da as her last one. So
wow.
that kind of blew me away when you said that about the journals. I was like, wow, people find each other in this world, don't they?
They do. But they find each other if they're telling the truth about their lives. They don't find each other if they're trying to be somebody that somebody wants them to be.
Right.
And so when I met Annette, I absolutely found, you know, a sister, a soulmate. I mean, she did have the journals, but she also had a sort of slowness about her that made me recognize that she was recognizing things in the world that I was recognizing. I mean, it's kind of like my uncle, you know, like seeing me and realizing I was gonna be the kind of person who he wanted to gift things to that meant something to him that would mean very little to somebody else. And so when Annette called me because she heard me on the radio that day, I mean, we've been in touch, you know, ever since, because it's just like, it's cyclical. I mean,
yeah,
we, you know,
since '95, we've been loosely,
right.
Not very much, but since March of this year, something changed, and
yeah,
we're in a real dialogue. So
right.
when you asked me to invite someone, Nikki was the first person I thought.
You got back to me very quickly, so that all makes a lot of sense now. Okay, our first question is from Davion, and it's when writing about something heavy, like the tragedy in Charleston, do you ever feel overwhelmed or anxious when you tap into those perspectives?
Well, I think a long time ago, when I started writing about what Davion calls heavy subjects, I always knew that I wanted to be able to write about things that were potentially or were disturbing. I didn't want to avoid the hard things. That's what one of the early lessons I found as a poet with models and with people who I really respected. Like they would take on hard things. And I knew that my mom, this book is called Love Child because that's a name my father gave me. And I didn't understand it then. He called me Love Child because he wanted me to know what I had come from. And he knew that as a Black girl in the world, I might be called other names. And he didn't want me to answer to those names. He wanted me to answer to Love Child because he knew what had created me and who had created me. And so I grew up really with an incredible tender heart. And my mom used to call me her sensitive child. I don't really think that was meant kindly, but it was meant, but it was me. It was me. And so I wrapped my arms around it because I was sensitive. Things made me cry. Things made me wonder, why did people treat each other like that? And so if I was going to attempt to really be the poet I wanted to be, I had to take on these hard subjects, had to figure that out. And so I always feel like I'm about to collapse when I'm writing something like that. I always feel like the image in my mind, again, I saw a woman entering a lake, a river once, and she walked right into the river and the water came right here and she didn't stop. And that's how I feel when I'm writing something horrible. Like the water line is right here. And if I stop, I feel like the water will take over. But if I keep going, I don't feel like I'll go under. I feel like I'll have the leg strength and muscle to walk to the other side. And it always happens that way, Davion. I trust myself. You can't just do it without being ready. You can't, there's homework to do. It's like tackling a subject that you're visually trying to put on the wall. First, you have to make sure you're ready to tackle the subject because every subject is not ready for you to tackle it. You're not ready, the subject's not ready, so you have to sort of go into the water, come back, go into the water a little bit more, get a little deeper, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready. And when I saw that photograph, I said, I'm ready. And I had been weighing what to say for 2 years. And so you can't be on a time, you can't be on a clock, you can't be on somebody else's clock. This happened in 2015. I didn't write that poem until 2018, maybe. So trust yourself, listen to your belly. If your belly's saying, don't do it right now, keep swimming in and out. Then when you go in, you'll have the muscle and you'll have the wherewithal to tackle whatever subject I think you might need to. It's a great question. But don't turn away from it. You gotta, that's where you need to be working. When you get the chicken skin and you're nervous and you're like, how will I say this? That's where you need to be.
That's how you know.
That's how you know.
This leads into the next question. How do you decide what stories are important to tell?
I think because writing is 2 and 3 and 4 dimensions for me. It's physical, it's sensory, it's intellectual. It also has that visual element. You weren't there to see what I saw, so I really want to know that I can capture it. Mm-hmm. So when things kind of start lining up in those different dimensions, that's what I know. This might be next for me to work on. And I just pull it over and start working on it. it's a long process. But if it stays in that one dimension, kind of flat, then it's not something that I feel has enough, that I can't go around it. I can't go above it and look down or look up. And that's why that photograph means so much to me, because it's so not about the subject I wrote about, literally, right? But it is figuratively about what I saw. And so when those two worlds align, then I really feel like I can make something that hasn't been made before. I don't want to just write something that is the story you can take off CNN from last night. That's not a poem. A poem has to have, dimension and beauty, and has to offer you that new window. And if the new window is not there, then I'm really not interested in it.
Is story an accurate way to talk about that? I mean, is that in fact what you think your poems or a poem does, is tell a story?
I think so. I think, people sometimes say, well, story's not, it's not big enough. There's nothing bigger than a good story to me. And I grew up listening to my family tell stories. I grew up in a community that told stories, and I feel very proud to be in the tradition of that. And yeah, I think storytelling is a part of what I do, or what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to, like the last piece about Miss Morrison, which is absolutely part truth, because I met her 2 or 3 times, and she did say to me, "You working?" Which was like, am I working? Maybe I should go home right now and get out of this line and go work. But it was also about treasuring and honoring somebody who had given me so much in my life because of the books that she read and wrote and passed on to us. And I was trying to do, again, dimensionally bring together something that really happened with something that might be based in some magical realism, but was true in my heart, because I was saying when she won the Nobel Prize, I wonder if she needs a driver. I mean, could somebody call me and say, come, drive her anywhere she wants to go? And then she had just passed in August, and I really, this is how my life is. The book came out in March, so.
Okay, so I have to ask, did that happen, or did you imagine that happening and write about it?
It happened in my heart. It happened in my. Come on, Terry, go with me here.
I was with you. I was seeing your hat. I was seeing I was seeing all of it, and I thought, wait a minute, that's too much.
Okay, so let me just say, you have now offered me the one thing every writer wants a listener to offer them. They want you to believe that it's true.
Yeah. Well,
so if you ask me that question, yes.
You had me. I'm willing to bet that I'm not the only one sitting out here that was like, what? Wow.
Yeah, it really happened.
As we wait for maybe some other questions, or give some people time to, build up the nerve to.
Where are those questions? I can't even see you. You should be asking me questions that I can't see. Can't see you, so it's a perfect time to ask me a really hard question.
That's right. Nobody can see your face. Do you have something, Annette?
It's not a question, but an observation. When you were just giving that the visual of being in a river, it made me remember that scene from the Harriet Tubman movie.
Oh yeah.
She walks in the river and just keeps walking, like she's up to here, and she's And
everybody then says, "Oh, let's go."
Right.
We can do this. Yeah, that wasn't the river.
Get across or not.
Yeah.
See the movie, Terry? Did you see?
I didn't, but I'm going to.
It's well done, and the actress, what's her name, Terry?
Cynthia.
Yes. Arrivo. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Cynthia Arrivo.
Okay, here's
2 questions. They're getting fired up now.
Okay. When did you know you were a poet and a writer? From Tula.
Well, it wasn't in the beginning, certainly not, even though I think it was sometime in my 20s. Yeah, I'll tell you one of the moments. It was several moments, but one of the moments I was in a writing workshop with the great American short story writer, Toni K. Bambara in Atlanta. And I was very proud. We would meet on Sundays. And she opened up her house to anybody who was interested in writing. And I wrote this really cute little thing. It was full of metaphor and beautiful adjectives. And it was just so pretty. And so I sent it around the group. We would send our work around and then we would read it and then people would comment on it. And so we read it and then Toni K looked at me and she said, "So you can write pretty, so what?"
Yeah.
And that moment made me do a 360-degree. I wasn't, like people, I could hear people gasp. They would go, like, because they knew I loved the metaphor when it hit, and just, I was a figurative language person. And then I went home and I thought about what she said and I was like, she's right. Mm-hmm. It has to be more than just pretty. It has to move you. It has to invite you in. I have to find that window. I have to give you something that nobody else can get. She really turned me to the work of poetry. And I have never forgotten that. And I really felt like after that moment, the work I was doing, to find what needed to be talked about was the work of the poet, because I wanted to really offer something, not just give you something pretty. So that was a real turning point.
Not a lot of risk in writing pretty.
No.
So Benjamin asked, why did you start journaling?
Oh, Benjamin, wow.
Getting personal.
It's the most important question you can almost ever ask me. My life, I grew up in the 60s, born in South Carolina, with the backdrop of the Vietnam War was going crazy. Segregation, integration, Dr. King. My childhood was spent looking with my mother cutting off the TV because Dr. King was killed, President Kennedy was killed, Senator Kennedy was killed, Malcolm X was killed, and college students were trying to get a milkshake and a cheeseburger, and they were being beaten. This is my childhood. And so I started writing in journals because adults wouldn't answer my really tough questions like, why are people treating each other like that? Why do people have so much hatred spewing out of their mouth? I thought we go to church and church says that you treat everybody like your neighbor and you love your neighbor as yourself. What? I saw all these contradictions that nobody in my house was like, okay, darling, that's a really good question. Your father will be home in a minute. He'll answer it. Your mom will talk to you about that. And so I just started writing out my questions in, this is why I do long poetry right now, because not only would I ask the question, but I would try to answer it based on how I looked at people and how I saw people responding. And so I had a little running commentary with myself that became the journal that I still keep. I'm still asking questions that I find critical to my life and to the life of my community. And it's just the perfect place for me to work things out. I'm not really good with, like talking to somebody. I'm sure therapists get a really bad rap, and I'm not trying to be a therapist for myself, but I am trying to work something out in my journal. I'm trying to also, when I realized after 5 years of keeping a journal that I could go back at 15 and look at what I was thinking about at 10, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's kind of like Annette putting on the tape and saying, I'm going to keep this for something. I have no idea what I'll need it for, but who else was going to keep the document, was going to document my life? Mm-hmm. I didn't see anybody knocking on the window to say, you're important. What you see is important. What you feel is important. But I did hear my mom saying, what you see is important. What you feel is important. Never doubt yourself. keep a record.
What an answer. Okay, so Sonia says, I'm so starstruck, truly. Are your journals more diaristic in tone? Do they reflect your days? Or is it the content, more snippets, and what inspires you on a given day? And you got into that a bit with Ben's question. But.
Yeah, definitely the latter. The former, like you might find a few Kroger grocery lists, but very few. Mm-hmm. Mostly you'll find things that I want to wrestle with more and things that I want to think about deeper. And I typically write right before I fall asleep at night or right when I wake up in the morning. And yeah, it's a ritual. It's a good ritual.
Yeah, it seems like something that a therapist would advise you to do.
Right. As long as you're hard and tough on yourself and you don't like seeking out. I'm not seeking it out when I write down. I'm seeking an answer.
You're working it out.
Yeah, I'm working it out. Yeah.
So, okay, Jessica's question is, what is the biggest change you've noticed in your writing from your first writings to present day?
Wow. The first writings were so bad, Jessica. I try to keep those in a box with a lock on them, but I have them. I think trusting, I love surprise. Like I love in that Morrison piece, what surprised me as I was writing it. And I think that I would not be a writer to this day if I didn't give up the reins of power in the poem and in the process of writing poem and let the writing take me to where it wants to go. And I didn't know that as a young writer. I tried to get over here. I want to write about this. I want to write about you. And the writing would say, come on, go with me over here. And I wouldn't trust it. And so now, the more gray hair I get, I trust it so much more than I used to. And I love what I find, and I love the surprise involved in that.
What great lessons. Man, I hope people are taking notes tonight. Let's see, Tula says, follow up to Benjamin's question, what question are you answering today?
I want to know if we can have a secretary of kindness. That's what I woke up saying to myself today. My people, I'm from the South, so the South is very polite. We open doors for each other, and we we might curse each other out that night, but we're very polite and thoughtful, and we have two forks sometimes, and so I grew up really being taught to be kind, and I like being kind, but I also like tackling really tough things. And I miss the kindness we weren't perfect, ever, but I just don't feel like we are exuding that kindness that we used to. And I'm bound and determined not to give up being kind or to teach my students that this is a power. Kindness is a power. It's not it doesn't make you small to be kind. It doesn't make you less than. And we've been living in a time where we've not really, sent that along in a way. So I was writing this morning, the first thing I wrote was, I want to suggest that we have a minister of kindness. Yeah. That's the question.
I'm with you. Okay. Nicole says, would you say that your poetry begins as an idea or an image? Or an image you have? Or do you start first with an emotion? Or is there something else that triggers the desire?
Well, yeah, if you're open and you're walking out in the world, like I walk every morning, and I'm open to what I see or feel. There's some, like in the town where I'm living, I see more and more homeless people. I see people, there's always been a community of homeless folks here, but more and more as the economy turns, and I'm like, are we noticing this? This is like that it's just out there. So it's not one thing. The thing is to stay open to being an empathetic human being that cares about somebody beyond yourself. And that can come in the form of a visual, which is, I'm totally that, but it can also come in the form of, like, there were these signs on the street when I first moved here that said it was illegal to give anybody on the street money. And I just wanted to take a hammer and pull those things down. I thought they were so heartless. And I found myself like wanting to be arrested. Okay, here, you $5, let's go get some coffee. You know, just like trying to push against it. And I was like, okay, that's not smart. But so it matters. It matters that you feel powerfully about something and you don't act like it's not powerful. That's the thing. Whatever sensory board it comes through, let it come, let it catch it, and then figure out what you want to say in the beginning, and then let it take you where it wants to go.
Okay, Katie asked, how often do you revisit your old journals? Have you found anything surprising as you read what you wrote years ago?
Oh my gosh, Katie. I have been thinking of late that I need to have a big barbecue pit in the backyard, and I need to take all 159 journals and just have a fire one night. Because I was like, what? Why? This is bone, bare bone, heart, every part of me. And I don't want, what are they going to do with these after I'm gone? But I can't bear the thought of destroying them because they are so rich in how I got to be who I am. You know, it's really the unfolding of that. Every time I open one of those books, I always open one that's 20 years behind the age I am on my birthday. That's my little birthday thing.
Wow.
But I always am surprised. You cannot believe some of the things I have sketched down and written. And maybe that's why surprise matters to me when I'm writing something new. Yeah, it's all there. Well, most of it
is information. I was going to ask if it was information or process, but it sounds like it's both.
It's both. It's both. Yeah.
So Karen, no surprise to any of us who knows Karen Weiner, asked, what do you read?
Everything. Everything. Oh, I was at a college back in the old country when we used to see each other face to face. I was on stage at a college, and it was 2,000 students, and one student came up on the microphone and she said, I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. She said it 10 times, and she's like, tell me what to read.
Oh.
Said, read everything. Read popular mechanics. Read the dictionary. Read the newspaper. Read the backs of seed catalogs. Read how to grow a sunflower. And she was like looking at me, and I was like, how do you know what you will need to write the thing you don't know you've written yet? So you have to just submerge yourself in the world. And like last week, I needed to know, I found out that Crayola crayons had a different word for orange 100 years ago. I thought, I have to go find that. So the research part of writing is also very close to me. And you have to like understand as a writer, research is not writing. Because I can research for weeks, some sort of subject matter. And then I'm like, yeah, but I'm not working. I'm just like reading and finding and curious and getting information, but I'm not taking that information and building something, you know, a poem that has a door and a window and a story behind it. So knowing that you can research your life away is not the same as working on a new book or working on a new poem or working on a project, because it takes a different side of your mind.
I have a quick question. Are there books right in front of you, Nikky, right now?
Yeah.
What's right there?
What do you
Oh, just in front of me right now is just Rice and then Love Child. But yeah. But I have Prince over here to my right and James Brown and some other things like that. So, but I do mean that about, don't pick up books that somebody might give you and say, oh, this reminded me of you, and just read that. You have to like get out your comfort zone and read books that like challenge. I mean, I read chemistry books. I read physics. I was terrible in those subjects in high school, you know, but when I'm writing, sometimes I need to like put in something that I don't know anything about that has to do with that subject. And that's what I mean by, I have Black's Law Dictionary somewhere in this room because I have I love words. And there was a word in Love Child called usufruct, USUFRUCT. And it's an old legal term that says when somebody uses the fruits of somebody else's labor. And I was like,
that's a good
right?
one.
Usufruct. So
it makes me think about your acceptance speech for the National Book Award for Poetry. And you talk about the one teacher who said, Ms. Finney, why are you sitting there? Have you read every book in the library? How did it go?
I'm sitting on the wall. It's a Friday. It's 4:00. Dr. Gloria Wade Gales, my best teacher, who was always pushing me. She sees me sitting on the wall. We're getting ready to go to a dance. It's Friday. I've done my work. She's walking toward me and I'm like, oh, I know she's coming for me. And she stands right in front of me. There are other students here. She's not looking at them. She goes, Miss Finney, have you read every book in the library? And they start laughing at me and the question. And I go, no, Dr. Gales, I have not read every book in the library. And she goes, well, that's where I'm headed right now. Let's go. So I either have to say no to my best teacher who has given me so much, or I have to go with my girls to the dance. And I have to make this split-second decision. And I pick up my little bag and I follow Dr. Gales into the library, and that's where I stay. And she was testing me. People who love us test us, and we either pass or we fail. And I'm so glad I followed her. I was miserable because I missed the dance, but in my little mind, I was like, there'll be another dance. I'll go to another dance. But Dr. Gales needs me to know that I see her and I trust her. And to this day, she swears she didn't do that. And she did it so loudly, it just resonated in my head and heart. And to this day, I think about that moment where I could have done something else, but then I got to thank her when I won the National Book Award.
I was going to say, I don't think you've been talking about going to the dance in your acceptance speech at the National Award for Poetry. Okay, this is going to be our last question, and it's a sweet one. And knowing the source, I'm not surprised again. I love people's questions, reflecting back on them. Do you have a journal handy? And if so, willing to show us?
I don't. I didn't bring it because I was. Oh man.
I know Sierra's like, can I just take a peek at it?
Oh, Sierra, I had it. It's right there. It's in another room, but I'm sorry.
Okay. Sierra can imagine it. I have a feeling she's imagining it now. So that was beautiful. That was so sweet. It was so good. It was so nurturing. And I think every young writer, actually young and old writer and artist in the audience, that was, you got that for free. So wow. And Devin says, this was beautiful. Thank you. Thank
you, Devin. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your thoughtful questions, and you're taking the time out on a Tuesday night to listen to some poetry and listen to two friends have conversation and talk about visual art and poetic art and literary art, and to know that, there is a connectedness between all these things, and they have to do with the human heart and the human mind, and all of us who are trying to make the world strong and better and more loving, and see each other in ways that art always leads us into. So thank you for coming tonight. And thank you, Terry, for hosting this, and John and Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
So much our pleasure.
Thanks.
And I just want to remind everybody, I think John will put up a slide that we'll be back here next week. It'll actually be our last one that's officially part of this Being There season. Khalil Robert Irving will be here a young, amazing talent artist who is here on the invitation of Glenn Ligon. So I hope you'll come back and join us next week. You know, bring a friend, do something nice for somebody. Tell them about next week's program. Okay, sweet people, sweet dreams.
I like that, Terry. Sweet people. I like that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Terry.
you.